Haven't come today.
Everything on vacation still, right?
Yeah, and he's transferred you to vacation, so. And his secretary is out with COVID, so I bet he's in no hurry to get back to the office.
All right. We're live. Okay, so 8:22, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the reading of our mission statement. Lewis County Economic Development, through its board, the IDA, and its brand Naturally Lewis, are championing the growth of a community where people want to live, work, build business, and play. We foster forward thinking and relationship building, connecting people, businesses, partnerships, and resources to effectively and efficiently grow our town. Okay, I don't believe we have any guests with us today. Haley sent out the meetings from the minutes from the February meeting last week. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Any questions or comments? A motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Herb, second.
One second.
Darlene, any discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, financial report, Cheyenne.
All right. Got your balance sheet, and I had promised last month that I was going to give you two different reports. One with the pilots classed out, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't clear, so you've still got them in there. The profit and loss first. All right. So we did have a couple pilots pay at the end of December versus in January, so that's why you see on the pilot payments pass through line. We paid a bunch out that had previously been received, so that's not a wash like it typically would be. Then the three lines that are kind of interrelated that I wanted to point out are the 3071 contract revenue, 3046 other income, and under expenses 9,000 CDBG grant. Those three are all related to the CDBG Launch Lewis County grant program. We just didn't write as many checks out as we didn't. With that program, we don't get the check in until we're ready to write the check out. So we just didn't have anybody ready in January for those checks, but we just wrote one. So we're on pretty good pace with that program to have it all done in a good timeline. I didn't have any other super notables on this report, but if you guys got any questions.
Any questions on the financials?
We've got the balance sheet next, and again, this is the one where the pilots really kind of muddy it a little bit because we've got Copenhagen Wind, Flat Rock Wind, Number 3 Wind, and the Black Moose Mortgage all coming into the checking and savings line. And then accounts receivable, we've still got, I think, Roaring Brook and one other one was still hanging out under accounts receivable. So those lines just get super big and the percentages are crazy on them, but everything's on track there. Also under other current assets, you see that one decreased by about 84,000. Most of that is the Black Moose Mortgage coming off as an asset and going into cash and debt. The other line affected by the pilots is the accounts payable. Sometimes when they come in 1 month, we don't get them paid out until the next. So the accounts payable are there, and Joe just signed a bunch of checks for us. So those are all moving through and on track for the most part. Any questions there? You've also got the expenditures report because we didn't have a finance committee meeting this month or last month. You've got the expenditures report so that you have visibility into exactly what was written out.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Motion to approve the December financials. Is
I'll make the motion.
that all right, Goggin? Second?
I'll second.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jessica. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion
Aye.
carries. All right, next is loan approval from the small business fund.
Yeah, so last month, the board approved some tweaks in our loan guidelines that allow us a little bit more flexibility to help with some bridge loans. Specifically for grant programs where they need to front the money and then be reimbursed, and then the tax shack was able to get an application in and through the loan committee within the month to utilize just that. So they have been able to purchase their trailers. So this is the Launch LC recipient. They were able to purchase the trailer and get reimbursed for that. And now they're looking to stock it, basically. They have about just under $9,800 in inventory they want to purchase to put in there. So they're looking for a bridge loan to just cover that inventory until they can get the check from Launch LC to cover it. A lot of the supporting information was in the CDBG application. So it was a pretty easy application. They're looking for only 2 years. It should be a 6-month process at the most to buy the inventory, submit it to the state and get the reimbursement check. But we're giving them 2 years with the first, we're looking for the first year interest only payments. Is that what we?
Cheyenne,
I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, Goggin?
so you did change it. Did everybody approve that 1 year instead of 6 months?
I just want to look back in the minutes really quick.
Because initially when you had sent the application, I believe you had suggested interest rate of 0% for 6 months, and I thought it'd be prudent to do 1 year. I didn't know if that's why you had changed it, or I'm glad it is changed.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thanks, Goggin. It was
Okay, no.
0% interest for 1 year, so they're only making principal payments. And like I
Awesome,
said,
thank you.
it should be a shorter time frame, but we're giving them some time just in case.
Great.
Hopefully it's completed by June, because that's technically when we need to have all of the funds dispersed for our New York
Oh,
State
gotcha.
contract.
Okay.
But we can always file for an extension if we need it.
The
Gotcha.
hold up. Not the proprietor, not us, but the state? Would that be the hold up? Like you said, hopefully it's completed by June. I guess where would be the bottleneck there?
To me, the holdup would be the business owner, maybe, but to me, it should be a quick process. Really, the turnaround process for the state is like 2 to 3 weeks to
Okay,
get those funds back. So once we receive the receipts, we fill out a bunch of forms, submit it to New York State, and then it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the county to get the check, and then they cut a check to us, and then we cut a check to them.
so the responsibility lies on the business owner to follow that. And has that been like outlined in any sort of agreement or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they all have to sign a contract with us, and they all understand that it's reimbursement. Like, to me, this whole loan process and the business owner being able to purchase would be the holdup, but I'm confident that it'll be done by June.
Right, because so with our loan program, we do need Dink to underwrite the loans. So I pushed all the information over to him so he could kind of get started on that. And he thinks it'll only be a couple weeks to process that, Matt Cyber over, I think. Because sometimes that can be the hold up too. So we need approval here, then I can officially tell him, yes, 100% sure it's a go. Underwriting takes a couple weeks. We gotta get the money to the, so it's just a process. But I think this one is easy enough. That'll get done without an extension.
Yeah, and I do have some updates on that program, and just so you're all aware. So we have 8 projects that were approved. The Turn Highlands project, we nullified that award because of the crazy environmental. So we are working with a business who does qualify for that grant. She's going through the application and entrepreneurial training course at this time. 3 of those projects are completed, meaning we've received the funds and have cut the check to them. 2 are half complete, meaning they need to submit one more reimbursement to complete their project. And then the other 3 are in progress. They're still working on buying equipment, and hopefully they'll submit reimbursement this spring sometime. Once we have 80% of those funds dispersed, we can then reapply for more funds with the state. And we did have our monitoring with New York State on our first round of CDBG funds, and it went really well. So the Office of Homes and Community Renewal, they're like ready to give us funds. We just have to wait until 80% of these funds are dispersed. So we will continue to keep that program going.
Good discussion. Any other questions?
So the approval would be contingent on the underwriting
Yeah.
being completed?
Yeah, so we approved the loan with the terms of 0% interest for 1 year, 5% after the 2-year term, all contingent on the underwriting.
All right. Any questions? Motion to approve the so that, again, this is from our small business revolving loan funds and underwritten by Dank.
Yep.
Um,
This is the county funds, not the USDA funds.
so
I'll make a motion.
her motion to approve,
I'll second.
Goggins second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, executive director's report.
Yes. Updates from February. We have been very busy. It seems like this month just didn't exist. But a lot of events that we were a part of or attended, we hosted a really successful business leaders breakfast on February 10th. We had about, I don't know, probably 60-ish people in attendance. Had a great panel on regional partnerships. Joe, you were there. Yeah, it was a great conversation, and you know, we host the business leaders breakfast events twice a year, so really thankful and excited to be part of those and to attend those. I attended the Small Communities Big Opportunities Conference in Saranac Lake. That was the conference hosted by INCA and the Center for Businesses in Transition. We had 3 Lewis County people attend that conference, and we sponsored tickets for 2 entrepreneurs just to get them there. That was a really great conference. The focus was, you know, if you're an entrepreneur looking to buy a business, or if you are an existing business looking to sell, they had a matchmaking event and just really informative and a great networking event to bring people together from the region. And yesterday, Cheyenne and Kaylee and I attended the New York State Economic Development Council Economic Development Conference in Albany. This is something that they do annually, and it's wild. I sit on their board, and this is the largest conference that they've ever had. It was over 375 people. And when I think back to almost 7 years ago when I started in economic development and started attending those conferences, it was, you know, no offense to the men in the room, it was all men and very few women in economic development. And now there's so much diversity. There's you know, young to, you know, people who've been doing it for 25, 30 years. And then just the diversity in the people that are attending. It's not just economic developers, it's education, it's workforce development people, it's Empire State Development, it's senators and assembly people. So it's a really amazing conference just to get everyone together in the room to talk economic development. Also, you know, we talked a lot about this on our ride home last night, but tons of compliments from colleagues across the state who are seeing what we're doing. They're watching what we're doing, and it's just great to hear from people that we've looked to for inspiration in the past. You know, they're looking to us now at what we're doing. So, team is doing great things. Also want to highlight, I forgot to put this on my report, but we were approved funding through the Pratt Northam Foundation workership program for an economic development intern this summer. So in the past, you know, we've had Kaylee on as our marketing intern. We had Aiden last summer as our finance intern. I wanted to mix it up and hire an economic development intern, someone who's gonna see all aspects of economic development over the summer. So we still have yet to sit down as a team and nail down that interview process and what we're looking for, but expect an intern this summer that's fully paid for by Pratt Northam. And I will say we are patiently awaiting Jenna's return. She will be starting part-time on the 13th. And the reason of this
We're
month.
in the month.
And the reason why I say that is I want to share some DDA stats that I communicated at our staff meeting earlier this week. Just from January 1st until now, we've had 19 DDA surveys filled. 10 of those are existing businesses, 9 of those are new businesses. All of those individuals we sent either the Small Business Development Center or the Adirondack Economic Development Corporation for business planning. That's the first step with all of them. 4 to 5 of them we are actively working with on larger plans. Again, like we're sending them all to the SBDC, but 4 to 5 of them we are actively working with on just larger projects. 3 of those we have used DDA funding from a National Grid grant to pay for technical assistance, and 1 of those is a business transition project. So that's just from January 1st. Like I said, without really marketing the program. So this is why we are patiently waiting for Jenna to return, because there's just there's so much going on, so much great stuff, and a lot of ideas that I have just from being involved in how we can kind of shift the program. Like I'm almost thinking like we need separate tracks for different types of projects. So, you know, we'll definitely work with Jenna on just growing that program. So good stuff happening. Any questions?
A comment, I like the format. You changed up the format.
Yes. I was thinking of Kaylee while I did that, because I'm like, okay, we'll make this a little bit more on brand. That's good. Yes, thank you.
Something I had mentioned to Brittany, and you know, we certainly appreciate everyone's extra effort with the maternity leave and stuff, and frankly, something I didn't really think about, but you know, in another business, you might, you know, hire someone, or someone picks up extra hours, something like that when someone's out, right? And here, you know, we've tried to have a maternity leave policy that can be as flexible as we can, but it does put extra work on everyone else in, you know, salary positions, basically. So not starting any rumors or making any assumptions, but with a lot of young families in the office, we're thinking forward that, you know, I think if this arises again, just thinking more about what we can do to bring in some temporary support and planning ahead a little more on that. And we did that to some extent when Cheyenne was out by contracting with accounting firm to help with some of the bookkeeping at the time. But just wanted to throw that out again for just to be thinking about going forward of making sure we can think a little bit more ahead about supporting that. So,
That's a really hard one, because there's just some positions that trying to train someone to step in for you is worse on the existing staff than, right?
yeah,
It's just a catch-22 where
it does depend a lot on, I think.
it's terrible.
Right.
The example with, with the accounting thing, that was a more natural fit because it was something we could
Right.
contract with.
General
and-
positions a
Yeah,
little, you
yeah.
know.
But if we could have taken something else off of Brittany's plate or Kaylee's plate, so if they were the ones to step in on Jenna's side, but we could have taken something else off their plate. So.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, I've got a comment in regards to that.
Sure.
So I agree with Joe that there should be something planned, but just thinking out loud, and to Brittany's point that we'd have to train someone, what if we gave the staff a choice to see if we have the ability to get someone, we could, but if the staff wanted to fill it in, could we perhaps compensate them higher? Because if we get someone else, we'd have to pay them anyways. What if we gave the staff a choice to say, no, we're able to take it on, and they just get extra compensation for that? Is there something that could happen like that?
I don't know any barriers to that. I mean, we'd have to kind of look into how we structure it, but I think that's a good thought, Goggin, and that we can certainly, explore functionally how that would work and as an option. But I think it's a very good part of the conversation to have.
I think it is too. That's obviously I'm about to go, and that's what my office is doing is. Granted, it's harder to find another attorney to step into my position, but they're just taking it on themselves with extra compensation, because by the time you bring in a temp, it's just
Right, the training.
more hassle than it's worth. So, yeah.
Right.
I just would also mention, I mean, I think that there's a hidden benefit, if we think of it that way, of, you stepping into that position, you may not have otherwise been as closely involved. And I hear you say, I have some ideas.
Yeah.
So there are also opportunities, I'm not saying that everyone should have to
Oh, yeah.
backfill with no compensation, but it's like, there are benefits to it too.
Yeah, like when Shy went on maternity leave,
Right.
it forced me to immerse myself in the finances, which was a weak point, when I was first hired. And even with Jenna, obviously we know she's doing wonderful work, but it's good to kind of take that holistic view of okay, here's where the program's at, here's where I think it could go.
Right.
So,
And I've done some DBA meetings, which I'm usually not the front line on. It's good to stretch ourselves, so,
mhm.
yeah, definitely appreciate
I think
the
that's
thoughts
all.
on
Yeah.
compensation or help, but there is a plus side to it, for sure.
I think, yeah, and I think that's all. This is all very good discussion. I mean, I will say on the flip side, some of our partners have commented about, the just lack of time and people. So there's that side of it too, right? In terms of when things have gotten off the door. So it's all a balancing act within that, right? And I'm certainly not suggesting you guys haven't stepped up and carried your weight across this, but it's just, it's a significant chunk of time and
Mhm.
there's a lot going on, so.
Yeah.
The responsiveness suffers.
Yes.
So given what we do and, our partners and the, businesses we work with and stuff, there's that factor as well in terms of our timeliness, so. Good discussion, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. New business.
Correspondence first.
Oh, did we have something?
Yes. So, I mentioned I sit on the EDC board, and one of the things that they do really well is keep us updated on all the legislation that that is either on the table or has passed related to IDAs or economic development. And I would say within the past like 2 years, they've really focused on this. And from my perspective, it's so helpful because it allows us to just be in the know without having to dig through, like, I don't have time to dig at what is really happening the legislative level with New York State. But the EDC will, I would say quarterly, send out a list of bills that are on the table. So I just kind of wanted to go through that list and then we'll get to this correspondence from Hodge and Russ. Let me see if we can zoom in on this. So these are the bills that have passed both houses and are awaiting the governor's signature, essentially. I sent an email about a month ago about notifications with pilots and again, they're putting more oversight and more administrative work on IDAs and making sure that we have a policy related to how we're going to communicate any pilots that we approve, and making sure that we're communicating with affected taxing jurisdictions on when pilots are 2 years out. And then the correspondence from Hodge and Russ, that was their memo and their guidance on how we should go about implementing those. So I mentioned that Shine and I will be working on developing like what does that policy look like for us? What works for us in communication? In the original bill, it mentioned things like we needed to mail copies to every affected taxing jurisdiction, including every single school board member. And the EDC worked, they had a ton of meetings with legislators and was like, that's impossible. Like, school board members don't have their addresses just on their websites, and nor do superintendents want us to be sending things individually to board members. So the EDC worked with them to get it down to just the school clerk that we need to send it to. So this is the sort of advocacy that's happening at the state level with the EDC, and they are certainly keeping us informed and really always encouraging us to take these lists and meet with our local elected officials just to let them know that these bills are on the table and help fight for us. So these are, these are mostly related to the notification law, and then I added something else. Another document to the this morning. These are all of the proposed IDA legislation, like on the table right now. So again, the green ones are bills, and then they have the color coded here, like which ones are past assembly, which ones pass the Senate. But these are just random potential laws that like people who don't like IDAs are just trying to pass. So for example, the one that was mentioned last summer at our conference, eliminating all IDAs and creating one regional IDA. Like that was proposed, it's on the table. It's a matter of if they can get it to move forward. Obviously, the EDC opposes that because IDAs need to be in the communities, serving their communities in the way that works for them. There's been a law on the table that could authorize IDAs to issue loans and grants. That stems back to COVID when they let us do that, but we opted out of doing that because we just didn't have the administrative support to do that. There's also a proposed law. I sent you that article earlier this week about not abating school taxes. So I will send this list to you guys as well. It's just good to know. And, if you are out talking to, elected officials and, you know, you want to represent the IDA board and just say, hey, you know, these things are out there. We want to make you aware. It's just good to know. And again, there are some legislators who really just don't like IDAs. And so they're going to do everything they can to make our lives.
Do you feel the county, so some of the other statutes that are out there, the county sends letters basically saying we oppose these? I don't know if it does any good, because I don't know if the governor's office really puts any trust or concrete evidence of anything coming from the county.
Yeah.
I don't know if a letter from the county might, like a resolution from the county might help, or if it would hinder something like this and you'd be better off going with your local representatives.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an option. If there are laws that are going to negatively affect IDAs, the EDC will say, hey, this law is on the table and it's about to pass. You need to call your elected officials right now. So they kind of alert us, which is good. And in that case, like that's when we should be notifying the county and
Having them pass
Having-
a resolution
yeah.
for it.
right. This law as well. So amending tourism designation section of the IDA law to require a third party analysis. So what's happening is, we can't incentivize retail projects. So recently there was a Moe's in Niagara County that received incentives. They claim that it would drive tourism. And so they're trying to pass a law to just make us do more analysis on tourism-based projects, because any retail operation could support tourism. Another example in Onondaga County, a few years back, they incentivized Costco coming in. But Costco did a full analysis as to how it's going to bring people from all regions of New York State to Syracuse to visit this Costco. And because of that analysis, they were like, okay, this is a really good analysis. Yes, we'll pass that. But in today's world, they were like, I don't think we would do that. But at that time, they had this really great analysis. So it is a little, when we were talking about like Turin Highlands and tourism, and it's considered like retail, we have to be very careful in what we do. And that's another reason why we want to update our UTAP and really go through it with a fine tooth comb, because we need to know what works for Lewis County and what we want to incentivize and put it in policy. And I've said it before. One thing I realized at our last IDA Academy that we attended is that they don't care how we do things. They understand that IDAs need to meet the needs of their local communities as long as we're following the law and we put it in policy. So I just wanted to share that with you all, and that we are being updated on all of these potential laws. And obviously, if there's anything crazy, I'll definitely keep you posted. But very thankful for the EDC that they do that for us.
And just, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, not directly related, but when we're talking about laws, policies, just wondering if you have had any communication on this RPTL 575B with the pilot, the reassessment. I don't know if you saw in the budget, it was changed so that stay that Lewis and Greer had is basically null and void, and they're trying to fast track it again. So we have written to, is it Senator Walker, I think, and some other. We're actually looking at retaining that legal firm to try to do some work.
So that it's interesting that hasn't come up with the
That's not in the
EDC.
budget.
Yeah. I will bring that up to them. Because they have a lot of pull. Ryan Silva, the director, he's speaking at these legislative sessions, and he has conversations with the hard legislators who are trying to pass these laws. But
It's kind of crazy that the way that it was snuck in there and now it's just gonna,
Hmm.
looks like it's on fast track again. And there's huge implications for schools, towns, municipalities.
Yep.
Right.
You're talking about the email Scott sent?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Did you receive it as well?
I did, but I haven't received if there's actually been anything set up with the legislators. and The senator, I know the senators.
Ryan was very much,
responded, but-
yeah, Ryan was very much, and he's also said he had a meeting or has a meeting scheduled with Ryan and Candace at the tax. What is she, real property tax office?
Candy.
Candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just bubbling back up and I was surprised that, I don't know if it would fit this type of list of,
Yeah,
because it's not necessarily a bill, it's like a budget.
right, and they just.
Sneaking it in.
Yeah,
I did invite myself to the next assessors dinner to try to. Every once in a while, I try to understand more about that, so
Gosh, I hope
hopefully they'll be
that's
talking
scary stuff.
about it as well.
It was, I can't rest it. I went to that guy.
Thanks, Sterling.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I just wanted to mention, if you happen to find yourself, looking back through what we have on the books. There are a couple retail things, with the, car dealerships. And that's another example of, there was justification around that based on the harm that would be done to the community if there was no place to buy a vehicle. And so yeah, I think it dates back to after the recession when some of the companies basically forced their dealerships to, put on new facades and update and all this stuff. And there was concern that if that wasn't done for dealerships in this county, then that would put citizens at a disadvantage. So that's the type of justification that's been used for stuff like this in the past. But just if you happen to be, bored and looking through all our stuff that we have on going, that that's the reason behind that.
yeah, that was a sales tax exemption.
Right.
But
Yeah.
even then, just with the sales tax exemption.
It still was considered a retail thing, so there had to be justification for it. So due diligence was done at the time of how that was allowable to do, so. All right,
But with rainy day legislation. Okay. Just wanted to share some updates on our 501(c)(3) initiative. Not everyone a revised structure. I want to start there. We had our 3-board presentation. When was that? November, beginning of November, I think. And at that point, we had presented the concept to the 3 boards. And since then, it has evolved a little bit. It's been refined where I feel really good about this structure and the staffing structure, and being able to move forward. So again, nothing's going to change with the actual organization. The 3 existing boards essentially are going to contract with the 501(c)(3) for staff services. The staffing structure, the only thing that's changed from November is the Director of Development job title and the Economic Development Operations Specialist. So Shai and I have been trying to figure out what's Shai's job title, what's her role, as we get into more property development projects, which we are presenting that initiative to the LCDC board after this meeting. There's just the there's a need for someone to manage the development. And I think of it as like the how-tos. So we have like, here's our economic development strategy, Shy's managing like the how are we going to get these businesses, properties to actually do something. So that position will, to start, continue to lead the incentives, as well as any property projects that we have going on. The economic development operations specialist, we knew that eventually we would hire a sixth person, but we just weren't sure like what that position was. This person is starting out as a specialist position to help assist us with the administrative support of the IDA, the LCDC, basically everything we do. So the more that we do, the more administration that comes with that. The more grant programs we launch, the more admin that comes with that. And we just need someone to help us with that, keep us organized, kind of doing a lot of the behind the scenes work. In the future, you know, depending on how this property initiative grows, that's where Cheyenne would like to focus her time, is on properties. But it's very much dependent on how crazy that initiative actually is and how much time it does take. So this is kind of the first step. And I feel very good about the stacking structure. Any questions on that? Any concerns?
We don't see finance there anymore. Is it assumed that falls under development?
We're just not gonna do that anymore.
Yeah, so, between executive director, director of development, economic development operations specialist, the finance stuff will be kind of spread out between those three. Thinking about like things like billing.
Yeah, like the day-to-day internal stuff, the economic development operations specialists. That type of skill set will be more than able to handle. That's where eventually, I'd like to see the director of development grow into a much more, I'd like to see property revitalization really just explode, but for the time being, that person, me, will definitely be handling the incentive sides, the pilot sides, all that kind of external, the loan side. With the support, obviously, the executive director. But just filtering out more of the day-to-day internal to the economic development operations specialist and the compliance side. So the director of development would handle more the getting the incentives done. And then like the annual administrative part of that can be, they can just oversee the economic development operations specialist doing that.
And that could potentially be like, that's where the growth could be for that person. So if we like hire the right person who has that finance technical skill set, like if properties explodes, like that's where the growth could be for that specialist, is more finance. Because again, like as we do more, we need more support, more staff to help. But I feel good. I feel good with the structure. Yeah, and then this just is a little, you know, some bullet points on what each person would focus on. And we were able to take a look at like what funding buckets help to fund what staff members. So obviously, all of the county funding, so the county funding that's coming in for IDA, LCDC, Chamber, and Tourism will go to Naturally Lewis Incorporated. And that's what would support executive director, director of tourism, the economic development and tourism development specialists, just Kaylee, and director of programs and partnerships, also the member investor network, and any revenue that's coming in from our events that we hold would help to support that. IDA and LCDC staff service contracts would support the other two roles.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the county supporting the LCDC in giving them vacant property revitalization funds with an administrative portion. And hopefully as we recycle that money and get seed funding to do more and more. That's where the director of development, if that role is gonna grow to more property focused, it's kind of when Brittany and I are both hired, we had our original role and it was kind of incumbent on us and the organization to do really well at something to grow that role.
Mhm.
So that's where if we can grow that pot of money doesn't need to come from county so much, it recycles itself.
Mhm. Yeah, the key is to grow programs to get revenue in administrative fees. So like, CDBG funds, for example, in applying for 300,000, we'll get 30,000 in admin from that grant. The VPR funds, that's 50,000 in admin funds. The Community Economic Development Program, right now, it's 15,000 a year in admin. And as we continue to grow that percentage of what we get goes up. And of course, with the IDA incentives, the more projects we incentivize, the more in admin fees that are coming in to the IDA to support those roles and projects. And then again, this is nothing to approve today. I just wanted to get the contracts in circulation. These are literally the same exact contracts that Mohawk Valley Edge uses with their IDA and LDC. I just made it meet our needs. And in thinking about the service fee, so this is written if we launch June 1st, so from June to December 31st. The thought is that the fee would be, and Cheyenne, how do you say it? 90% of the annualized distribution of pilot administration fees. So if you can recall back sometime last year, Shy had a whole chart of like over the next 25 years, here are all of the projects that we need to be administering. And so that's where that number comes from. This 300,000 number is 50% of that, for 6 months. So definitely open to discussion on that. Any thoughts?
It's where it
Concerns?
puts a little pressure on the IDA to continue to do projects because after a few years, like we've all seen on the budget, it kind of drops off a little bit. Where that distribution lies. So it kind of puts some pressure on the IDA to do some projects, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Any thoughts? Questions? Concerns?
I mean, I haven't read the agreement yet word for word, but I mean, the structure makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that's what we want. This, like we talk about the ability for like the IDA and LCDC to be kind of tools of economic development, right? And resources to advance those initiatives in the community and also support, be a funding mechanism for the broader work. So I think, that all, to your comment about putting pressure on the IDA to continue to do stuff, that's what we want, right? We've really worked to not just be a passive organization waiting for someone to approach us about a project, but to be actively out there supporting other people with ideas, but also presenting ideas and trying to be the catalyst for some of that to happen, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's good to keep the pressure.
Mm-hmm. And the shift would be like IDA meetings are literally just IDA work. The economic development strategy, like the big picture stuff, that all moves up to the 501c3. So I find that I think it's a huge opportunity for both the IDA and LCDC to just really only focus on,
Really specialized.
really specialize and make sure that we are really good at the things that we're offering. It allows IDA, like all of our policy work that we have to do with our UTAP, it allows us to just really focus on that and not have to also try to fit in the economic development strategy. So I think it's gonna be great in that sense, that we don't have to try to find time to fit everything in, because the IDA is the lead economic development agency at this point. So next steps, Kevin McCardle has submitted, we just did draft bylaws, very basic bylaws. He has submitted the articles of incorporation bylaws to the IRS, which is the last step. Also, Kristen and I have gone through all of the surveys that the board members filled out based on like what board do you want to be on, what's your interest, and we started to kind of lay that out. So we will put that in circulation as well. So again, the intent is June 1st, but who knows what the IRS could take 6 months, who knows? So we'll just keep moving forward.
Thanks for the update. Any other questions? All right. So, moving on, we still have that, right?
No,
No, we're,
no, that would have been for brewery.
I don't know about, so do we still have to, do any sort of approval for the,
Oh, that's
Hodgson Russ? I thought that's might be what was,
the Roaring Brook contract. Should we get a motion on that, or we did this number?
We can get up to 8. I don't know if we need to do an exit. It's all open, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So just an update on Roaring Brook Wind. We kind of expected that there would be a pilot payment actually last year and then again this year. But based on their commercial operation date notice, which is the notice between I think New York ISO and the company. Technically, their commercial operation date wasn't until July, which is after the March 1st tax status date. So if you dig into that pilot and the wording of the pilot, even though the schedule laid out for pilot payments would suggest that they would have started paying last year or the year before even, the wording in when they need to start is the year after the first tax status date that they're operational. So that would mean March 1st of 2023 would be their first date operational for tax reasons. So they wouldn't have to pay until 2024, which I think, and I've had conversations with representatives from Avangrid, and they kind of agree, I think, without really saying it, that the intent was never that it stretch on this long, that they'd be off the tax roll for 4 or 5 years and not be paying pilot monies, but they have not a lot of flexibility because they're going to be cutting a check for $600,000-$700,000 and they need to do it based on a document. So I continue to disagree that like the intent was ever for them to not be making pilot payments by this point. So we dug into the pilot a little bit. There really isn't a lot of flexibility there, but we asked our partners at Hodgson Russ to look at it because the pilot was drafted between Kevin McCardle, our local counsel, and the developers council. at Schwartz Moses at the time. So Kevin just isn't specialized in that, so we brought in Hudson's Rust that we've worked on with other wind projects, other energy projects. And they're working with Matthew Moses to try to come up with a compromise, if nothing else, to get a payment this year. That's in progress. We expect an answer this week, and we do expect that we can get a payment before the school's fiscal year end. So the county and the town, their fiscal year is the calendar year, but the school, it would have an impact on them if they couldn't get that payment before the fiscal year end in June. So that's what we're working towards at this point. At a bare minimum, we want a payment by then. We'll keep you updated, and that's what that contract that Joe needs to sign is in regards to, is that we need to pay Hutchins for us to do that work for us, because they can't bill the company because they weren't even the original counsel on the project.
Can we have let the taxing jurisdiction know that we're working on something?
Right, so it's the town or the county, the town of Martinsburg, and Level Academy that would be the affected taxing jurisdictions. For your awareness, if it comes up anywhere.
It's a bit of just a whole bunch of timing issues and circumstances. I mean, the project was delayed, the stuff with the state, there's all sorts of delays that probably shouldn't say weren't expected, but weren't planned. And then there's, frankly, there's the fact that we have taxing jurisdictions kind of making assumptions about things that aren't actually complete yet for their budgets. So that's a bit of a challenge too. So, but at the end of the day, it's an expense to us, but it's an opportunity to try to work through this and get back to the fact that this project was originally planned to go online a couple of years ago, basically, and it's been delayed for various reasons, and that's having an impact. So
Right, and not that we love to be in this situation, but we do get pushback on collecting the pretty sizable IDA administrative fee for these projects. So this is our opportunity to say, hey, we're administering this, we're fighting to get the payment this year. So it is an opportunity, I think, to show the taxing jurisdictions that this is why we get the money, that we're gonna work towards this.
So essentially what this was a proposal from Hodgkins Rust to be billed for their services for this renegotiation or trying to resolve this issue. So. Any thoughts? And hopefully it'll be minimal. It seems like there's willingness on both sides to talk and figure it out. So.
I guess the question then is the cost. I mean, they're not gonna renegotiate this unless they're getting some type of incentive of it. So is the cost going to be worth it?
I mean, we haven't heard back from Roaring Brook on exactly what they're willing to do yet.
I think what Hodgkins is suggesting is that like the whole payment schedule just shifts up a year.
Which it's not, if it had been executed when the project was supposed to be complete, right? The clock is for the number of years of the pilot from the first year, right? And we expected to be in year 1 or 2 now, which would have, was it 25 years or 20? So now it's not less money that would be coming in. When the clock starts, it's still a 25-year pilot.
Right.
It's just that the start date affects our taxing jurisdictions.
Right, so it just matters, the attorney fees, is that worth the money in hand quicker? And that's where it's hard. I don't know how you make that determination.
To Shai's point in rough numbers, it's, $750,000 distributed between 3 jurisdictions that are essentially relying. Had already kind of been planning on that for this year's budget, so it's a pretty significant chunk of money.
Are we confident they're going to agree to do this though, or you're gonna spend a lot of money? To not know.
I'm confident there'll be a compromise of some sort.
I think the attorney for Roaring Brook was willing
Yeah.
to talk.
The other group representative seems willing.
And I think just as the IDA, like, we need to do this for the taxing jurisdictions. We need to show that we are willing to fight for this.
Sure.
So,
In addition, I would say, is there proactive work to be done in relation to number 3? That we get out ahead of this, talking to those taxing jurisdictions to make them aware that,
I mean, number 3 is already paying the pilot and they're not
Okay.
operational yet.
okay.
so that's.
Well, and that was changes,
That pilot was drafted by Hudson's Russ. So I think the shift in using a more experienced firm is evident there. But also, I think there is some coaching
Mhm.
that I can do in the future on. I mean, they all have the pilot agreement, all the taxing jurisdictions have the pilot agreement. But I can walk through that verbiage with them and tell them, don't budget, but it's not yet. Right. Only budget it when the pilot says that it's going to happen. And it's hard, the timing's all hard because you're writing your budget up
Mhm.
before you know if that operational date is gonna happen. It's really hard, but we can definitely coach them a bit more.
because you're predicting construction end dates and agreements with New York State to go online and all that, right, so.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, is it gonna be a cost? Yes. You know, do we know exactly what it'll be? No, but you know, I think to
I'm
this
just
point.
worried as an attorney, I know what I would charge.
If you were charging what this is, you wouldn't be sitting here with. Yeah, so,
Double charge on
Yeah.
this, but I'm still charged, so, but I guess if you have to write it off basically as a learning experience, then.
yeah, well, and we have, you know, every almost. So within our, you know, we've both made updates to our tax exemption agreement and we got, you know, gotten different legal counsel and found different examples from other projects. So it's, you know, almost every project has been an upgrade from the last in terms of specifying the terms of the contract, to the point on number 3 being a very different contract than this one, which actually this one is quite old. Because Roaring Brook was proposed several years ago and then they never got approved through ISO for a contract, and it got, you know, I remember 5-6 years ago, people thought this project was dead in the water and was never going to happen. Then all of a sudden they reapplied to the state and got their project approved, and so it's a pretty old agreement. For where the project is today.
That's something, I think, that's a point to revisit too, especially based on conversations I had at a conference yesterday, is making sure that we have a deadline almost for all of our pilot agreements that haven't closed. That if it's been too long, we need to renegotiate. So like Deer River Wind, like if they came back to us tomorrow and wanted to do their project, they would have to, like, those negotiations are so old.
Yeah,
Those are not what we're gonna go with anymore.
yeah.
So making sure that we have that on paper.
So I appreciate the discussion, and it's not something to be taken lightly, but it's just a less than ideal situation to, or,
I mean, I don't know if we should make a motion, but just to have it in the minutes that.
yeah, so we have contract that Hodgkin Trust is looking to have signed, so we want to make a motion for me to execute that, then. If would give us documentation to work with.
Yeah, I think you need a motion on
Do we have? Anyone want to make that motion?
It won't include add a fee up to or like anything like that because they didn't give us an estimate.
it. They gave us
We-
their hourly rate.
We have an hourly rate, but
We don't have the estimate of time.
right, because it's a negotiation, so it depends on how.
I mean, it could be approved with a not to exceed, but I don't know if that's feasible.
You can, that just gets questionable. I know the last one I done was 20,000. That's in Boonville, but. I don't know. I don't know, you could do an up to and not to exceed, but then it's almost like you spent all this money for absolutely nothing. At
Right,
that
because
point.
if they're
Yeah,
not,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
if it's not done by then you gotta go back to.
Good point. Yep.
So. Sure, what, it's just not a great.
I think it is incumbent on us to do the right thing. For the taxing jurisdictions, but. Educating, moving forward is really important.
Mhm.
Don't buy groceries with your grant money. I had a wise man once tell me that.
I remember that, same.
All right, so. Can
Make a motion,
we, yeah, Darlene,
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion.
Darlene made the motion, second,
I'll second it.
Jessica. Any discussion? All in favor,
But
motion carries, thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order here? With that, we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Darlene, second,
I'll second.
Herb, all in favor,
Aye.
meeting closed, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.